Okay, I think I'm going to get controversial here this morning. Especially this week, with the upcoming presidential debates. Immigration is the hot potato that no politician wants to handle. Now, I know this is a stereotype and an oversimplification, but I think there's some truth in it. Our immigration laws are a mess. They have been so for at least over 30 years because neither political party wants to solve it. The Democrats want votes and the Republicans want slaves. Caught in the middle are the children and their families. And that has been evident for a long time. Our inability to stem the flood of immigrants to our southern border has created chaos. And leaders continue to point fingers at each other, accusing the other for being at fault. And the storm still rages. Every day, the media report stories of suffering and pain, and not just immigration, where countless people are victims of a seemingly hapless and random universe that unfairly crushes lives. 3 young people are killed running a stop sign. Oh, but they didn't run a stop sign, because just moments before, some other teenagers out on a night of pranks had stolen the stop sign as a souvenir. He had lived his life so well. He ate all the right foods. He exercised regularly. He never forgot his annual checkup with the doctor. He was in love with his wife, and his children adored him. And then he discovers the lump. And it is all over in a matter of months. The bus was filled with happy tourists. For many of them, it was their first excursion to this part of the world. They were in awe of the spectacular mountain scenery. But no one saw that tractor-trailer truck out of control, rumbling down the mountain in the opposite direction. It had lost its brakes, and the people on that bus lost their lives. Such tragedies provoke questions for which answers are difficult, if not impossible. Why? Why must the righteous suffer? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why me, Lord? Such are the questions raised by one of the most troubling and mysterious books of the entire Bible, the book of Job, from which our first reading today is taken. Now, Job is a very pious and God-fearing man. He was so sincere about his religion that once, when his kids returned home from a Saturday night party, he quickly offered burnt offerings to God for them, just in case they had sinned. Oh, and on top of all that good religion, Job was rich, a man of incredible wealth. He was the quintessential success story of the Old Testament. He was, shall we say, Bill Gates and Billy Graham all rolled into one. Oh, and God is so proud of Job, so proud that God brags about him to the other members of the heavenly council. But there is a fly in the ointment. One of the members of the heavenly council, one by the name of Hasatan, the Satan, or the adversary. The prosecuting attorney disagrees with God. He says, no one should be surprised that Job is so pious and so God-fearing. After all, just look how richly blessed he is. And the Satan, the prosecuting attorney, dares God to take away Job's possessions, and God will see how short-lived Job's faith is. For without his wealth, without his health, without his kids, Job will surely curse God. And so, Job loses his family, and his wealth, and his health, and his body is afflicted with bleeding sores as he sits there in the ashes. Even his wife urges him finally to curse God who has abandoned him. But Job refuses. He will not give up on God. Now, this is the patient Job that most of us remember. Even though Job suffers, he refuses to give up on God. But this is only a partial picture of Job. This is the Job portrayed in chapters 1 and chapters 2. It is not the Job of the next 35 chapters. There, Job is anything but patient. Job passionately questions his suffering. Convinced of his innocence, he begins chapter 3 by cursing the day he was born. His life is no longer worth living. He wishes he had never come into this world. Job's friends intervene first by just sitting there in silence for 7 days. And then each offers answers to Job's persistent questionings. Oh, Job, you must have committed some sin, some terrible wrong for this to have happened to you. Job, you must confess of your sin. You must come clean about your errors, and God will surely have mercy on you. You see, such terrible and awful things do not happen by accident. But Job holds his ground. He maintains his innocence. He argues that he has done nothing to deserve this kind of suffering. And then Job does the unthinkable. He turns on God and demands an answer. God, why have you done this to me? For 35 chapters, Job carries on this argument with his friends and God, constantly questioning his plight and never getting an answer. But finally, here in chapter 38, today's first reading, Job gets an answer. In the midst of the roar and the howl of a mighty wind, God speaks to Job. And what is surprising is that when he speaks, it's not an answer at all. Instead of answering Job's questions, God responds with a series of his own questions. Job, you think you know so much, but were you there when I laid the foundation of the earth? You were there. Were you there when I created the world? God points to the magnificent mysteries and wonders of creation, things that Job cannot begin to explain. And if Job cannot understand them, then neither will Job be able to understand the mysteries of God. Job, who do you think you are? I will not permit myself to be put on trial by some human being. I am the creator. You are the creature. I do not have to explain myself to you. That is, unless you feel you know better. That is, unless you think you want to be God. In the last chapter, Job finally gets it. In chapter 42. There will never be an answer to questions like this. Who is Job to tell God what to do? And Job repents, acknowledging the error of his ways. But the story is not over. Job is there, and God goes to Job's friends and rebukes them, criticizing them for daring to misrepresent God. Because you see, Job's friends, life is not the neat and ordered tit for tat that they had presumed. Much of life remains a mystery, yet Job can trust the goodwill of the one who created the heavens and the earth. And the story ends with Job being blessed more lavishly than he had ever been blessed before. So what then is the message of the book of Job? The book is a passionate protest against the pious assumptions of traditional religious thinking. Such religion believes that, life is rational and God is manageable. Oh, what do we say? What do we say? Plan carefully what you do, and whatever you do will turn out right. A long life is the reward for the righteous. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. God helps those who help themselves. But life is not so rational and manageable. In spite of what all those gurus of success and self-help may tell us, much of life will always be irrational, unjust, and frankly, tragic. And what do? We sit back and pat ourselves on the back when things are going well. Oh, God must be so pleased with us. Gee, aren't we wonderful? We gripe and complain when things do not go well. We wonder what we have done to deserve such a fate, or how we can even believe in a God who seems so unfair. Like Job, we paint ourselves into a corner. For the more we persist with questions, the less we get answers. The more we wonder, why me, God? The more we expose ourselves for what we really are. Creatures who want to be the creator. Adams and Eves who decide to eat of the forbidden fruit in order to be like God. Frustrated with the mysteries of life, we want to be in charge. Yeah, we have our divine pretensions. God, let me be God. But there are no answers to such questions. Like Job, all we hear is the roaring wind. We are fools to presume upon the ways of God. In today's gospel, we see a similar picture. Jesus' disciples also find themselves at the mercy of a mighty whirlwind, tossed about by winds and waves that threaten to destroy them. Jesus is in the boat with them. But amazingly, taking a nap as if nothing was happening. They are not only surprised, but irritated with Jesus. Why does he seem so callous and indifferent to their plight? Why does he not recognize the danger that threatens them? This is not right. Like Job, they demand to know why. In our self-pitying and self-centered world, we, like Job and the disciples before us, assume that any suffering obviously must be unfair and undeserved. We assume that God should reward our obviously good lives. And when it doesn't happen, we demand to know why. Well, folks, God destroyed the belief that only good things happen to good people when pious Job lost everything. And when Jesus was nailed to a cross, could anything worse happen to people so good? To Job? To Jesus? With Job on the ash heap and Jesus on the cross, everything is turned upside down and inside out. So instead of asking, why do bad things happen to a good person? Like Job, like Jesus, like me? No. Instead, let us ask, why does God still love me when I have behaved like this? Why does God still love me when my complaining shows how self-centered I have become? Oh, and for those questions, God does have an answer. There, Jesus, God's answer. Jesus is God's response. And in Jesus, God does not explain why there is suffering and evil in the world, why our lives may be falling apart. Jesus is not God's explanation, but God's solution to the problem of suffering and evil. For when Jesus is in the boat, even the storms subside. Jesus joins all of us Jobs in our suffering with all of our unanswered questions. Jesus puts himself at risk and danger for us. In today's gospel, it was a boat. Eventually, it would lead him to the cross. There he dies, victims of sin and evil and storms and violence and cancer, just like us. But God raises him from the dead, proclaiming to Job and all of us who are ready to give up, God loves us. God will stand up for us. No storms or waves or whirlwinds or not even death itself that can separate us from the love of God in Jesus Christ. We can trust God. We can be sure that God loves us even when we end up on the short end of the stick. Even when the irrational and unpredictable randomness of life are enough to drive us to the brink. Even when we complain and resent our lot in life, we nevertheless get to live differently. Our questions are different. We no longer need to demand why life is so unfair. Instead, we get to ask, why has God not yet turned away? Why is God so gracious and merciful when we don't deserve it? Why does God keep repeating the promise of our baptism even when we don't believe it? Why does God never tire of giving us his broken body and blood at this table? Why does God still love us like that? God's answer? Jesus. And for that, folks, what can we say? What do we all say on a Sunday morning after hearing this good news? What can we say? Thanks be to God.